Gracefully Greying. I am co-founder Laurie Blume. Explore a platform of tips, trends, news, and informative discussions for you and your loved ones. Whether you're 50 and over or way over, find us on gracefullygreying.com, YouTube, and social media. Enjoy this live stream discussion. Welcome, everyone, to Gracefully Greying Live. We are thrilled to be welcoming today Paula Swain, co-founder of Financial Center for Women, and we'll be discussing Suddenly Single When the Unexpected Happens. Paula, welcome to our show. So good to have you.
Thank you, Laurie. Thanks for having me.
Just for our viewers, Paula is a certified financial planner with the Financial Center for Women, as I mentioned, and her passion is helping women plan for their future, especially after a divorce or the death of a loved one. So very important topic. Yeah, great to have you.
Thank you.
Tell us, I just kind of want to start this with, women historically, I kind of hate to say this, have years ago tended to remain out of the loop regarding family financial matters. But then when there's an emergency, again, historically, and certainly I hope this has changed now, but women don't know what to do. So tell us about that, your experience with that.
So yes, you're right. Historically, it has been different. I start to see slight changes. It depends on what age and what generation you grew up in. I mean, young women today have much more control of their finances than some of my older clients do. And I still struggle sometimes with helping them because when somebody does pass away, it's very, very devastating to have to deal with. And then to have to explain how to write a check or how to balance your checkbook or how bills are paid today. It's challenging. So one thing I always caution any young woman that I meet today is make sure you really know where your money is at. Don't depend on somebody else to take care of it for you.
Right. So is most of your clientele, they're women of all ages, younger women, older women?
Mm-hmm. So I would say 90% of my clientele are women 55 and above.
Okay. So kind of right in our wheelhouse of our viewership,
Correct.
Which is 55 and older. Yeah. So whether it's people themselves that are around 55, 60, 65, or people taking care of their parents. Are you finding that as time goes on, because I know you've been doing this for a while, women are way more proactive these days? What's your feeling with that?
Yes. I think a lot has changed with women because, as we've raised our daughters and we've told our daughters to make sure that you're independent and that you understand where your money is going. In doing that, they've also had to educate themselves. There's still that older generation, that 75 and above, that I still find don't want to talk about money, don't understand money. They say to their husband, he always takes care of it.
Yeah.
And, problem is that us women, we tend to live longer than our male counterparts. So we need to know how to handle our own money. And it's, you're devastated, you've lost your spouse or you're divorced, and now you've got to take on something you've never really looked at for 70 some years.
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
So what do you tell them? I mean, if a woman is older and she's lost her spouse, I mean, what's the first thing that you tell somebody?
Well, the very first thing that I tell someone is to just breathe, because you're overwhelmed. You don't, if you've lost somebody, that feeling, you don't know what to do. And you're getting advice from a million different people. Like, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, the advice is wrong. So the first advice is just breathe. Just take a step back, breathe, get your composure. You're going to be overwhelmed with all the things that you have to do. I say start making a list. And I have a checklist on my website, but start making a list of all the things that need to be done. Start gathering documents, but just, step back, take a breath, and it'll all work out in the end.
Right, right. And, having people like yourself, on their side, having a team
Correct.
is super important. So, not just yourself, but it could be an attorney, could be,
Hmm.
talk about that.
So we work closely with attorneys and your prep person. You need
Yeah,
to, because final estate taxes need to be done. Your insurance brokers can help out a lot. There's so many different resources out there, and even the funeral directors have a ton of resources that are available to help people when they're in this situation.
right, right. And it's different, if a woman's going through a divorce as opposed to her spouse dying. Um, what are the big? I mean, obviously there are differences, but can you talk about that?
Yes, having just gone through a divorce myself, I'm very
Yeah.
experienced. So that's a whole different ballgame. So now I don't want you to breathe. I want you to stand up and take control.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yes,
Interesting.
you you're in a situation, first of all, that you probably didn't want to be in. And then you have, you need to talk with an attorney. You need to sit down with maybe a financial advisor like myself and figure out where your money's at, what assets that you have, what your future is going to look like. We first start talking about a budget. You got to start, well, actually, in both situations, you have to sit down and figure out, what money you have coming in, what money's going out. So you need to start a new budget and try to think with the divorce. You've got conflict, hopefully you don't, but there's a lot of drama that usually goes
Sure.
on with a divorce. You are going to need to breathe and not react to a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
But most of it, it's not stand up. It's time to take control, be independent. You've got to figure your life out.
Right. And I would venture to guess that being very organized during that would be super helpful.
In both situations, being organized. So if you're contemplating a divorce or you've been, given the papers and you know that it's happening, it's when you're going to start wanting to gather as many documents as you can. So you're going to be wanting to look for the 401ks. You're going to want to look for the credit card statements, for the bank statements, anything that shows what assets you have, what income you have, what bills you have. And you want to start putting those in files because you're going to be asked at some point, what it is that you're going to look for in your settlement. And if it's on the other side that it's a surviving spouse, at some time you're going to need to know all those things so you can get accounts changed. Your name needs the deceased spouse name needs to be taken off, a lot of stuff. So just gathering documents. I just say when it comes in, put it to the side. Make a pile, and as you need that stuff, it'll be right there, and you'll have it all ready for you when you're
Right.
talking to
Right.
someone.
Okay. So in this conversation, we've been talking about women, but we could be talking about men too.
It
Goes
doesn't
both
matter.
ways.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah. Do you work with a lot of men? Do you work with more women than men? Do you work with only women?
The the funny thing about that is I just had this conversation with someone the other day, and he's like, "Well, I'd like to refer you to some of my male friends, but your business says Financial Center for Women." And I
Yeah.
say, you know, I have, 80% of my clients are couples. And then the remaining 20%, largely are women, single women.
Mhm.
But I do work with a lot of single men. So
Okay. So you
you're
work with
not working
everyone.
with the name Financial Center work, you're working with the person.
Right. Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. So you've mentioned a few things that that people should be doing proactively to prepare themselves. Getting organized, getting your ducks in a row, getting your team together. What are some other things that people should be doing?
Well, it doesn't matter. The things that we're talking about doesn't matter if you're going through a divorce or if you're lost your spouse. It's just something everybody should be doing anyway. It's just understanding where
Right.
your money is going. And, if you have, you know, if you know that your spouse, like I just talked with a gentleman the other day, his wife is terminal cancer.
Well,
And so he was asking me all kinds of questions. Well, how do I get these things transferred into my name? How do I do this? How do I do that? And
yeah.
my first reaction to him is do nothing. Just spend as much quality time you can with your wife at this time. And then when it all happens and she passes away, again, it's just go back to that breathe. Take your time. Nothing has to be done. You don't want to make any decisions for a year anyway when someone passes away.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
But
and then you just start to build your team.
Yeah. But in that case, I mean, he's going through a horrible time, but at least he's thinking about all that and knowing what's going to come up and what he's going to have to deal with. And I mean, again, that could be a woman or a man, but
Correct.
if you've got a terminally ill spouse, like that's a lot to think about.
So some of the things we talked about that he needed to look at was, power of attorney. So
Yeah,
he needed to have financial power of attorney over her currently, and then also healthcare, so that he could make decisions for her when she couldn't make them for herself. So that
right.
was done. We talked about making sure her beneficiaries were up to date.
Yeah,
So look at all the accounts and make sure that he's the beneficiary, or if it's not supposed to be him, it's somebody else. And then really at that time too, you could always consider changing your own beneficiaries, but then you don't know what's going to happen between, her passing and maybe you pass before her in some odd situation. So,
sure.
meeting with an attorney, and especially an estate planning attorney, was very important for them.
Right. Okay. Good advice. Is it different for someone who is a second widow? Someone who's been married and their spouse dies, and then a second spouse dies?
That's a horrible situation for them
It
to be
is.
in,
I
but it
know.
happens. It happens a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, no, there's no difference. I mean, there's difference when you look at maybe a second marriage. There's might
Right.
be some different considerations you want to take, and when you're entering to that second marriage, but the same emotions are there, the same steps will be taken on the second death as well as the first.
Right. Right. Okay. Let me ask you, are there any tips that maybe people wouldn't think of that you could offer? Like
So,
some of,
um, well, if you know that it's going to happen, like we talked about the terminal ill, meet with an estate planning attorney. Everybody should have a will, trust, power of attorney, or not necessarily trust, but a will or power of attorneys for financial and healthcare. Right now, everybody should go out and do that. That's something that everybody should have. Talk with your loved ones about money. And even if they're not interested, kind of sit down once a week and say, well, this is where the money is at currently. If
sure.
you're making changes, just, educate each other, talk to each other today, so that when that time does happen, it's not such a shock. They know where the documents is. It's the hardest for us as the financial planners when someone comes to me and says, I don't know anything at all. My husband passed away. I have no idea. I don't
Right.
know anything, and then I've sat in people's homes and gone through files and gotten into their accounts with them to try to figure out, it was the DTE bill coming to your house, or you do write a check, or do you pay it online? What automatic payments you have? Passwords. Passwords are huge. You have to have your passwords somewhere so somebody can get at them when
Sure.
something like that happens.
Sure. Do you find in that situation where somebody just has no clue, like they hadn't handled any of the finances, any of the bills, any of
Hmm.
it? I might be guessing here, but they probably are not great on tech, like probably don't know pass. Am I making an
Yeah,
assumption there?
some of them have never even been on a computer.
I mean, what, right. I'm sure that exists.
Hmm.
I know that exists, but that's got to be very difficult, very overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming, and that's when their children or someone that they know will step in and try to help. Um, so here's a really good tip:
Yeah.
is just because they're your son or your daughter or your sister or your brother-in-law, whoever it is, they don't necessarily have the knowledge that a professional does. Don't take what they say to be fact. You need to reach out to experts, and sometimes people don't have your best intentions in
Right.
mind and will try to take advantage of you as you're grieving.
Right. Even though they might be related.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
even though they might
Okay.
be related.
Right. Right. And I mean, another thing is, on conversely, if a grown kid sees that their, say, mom is very unconnected with the finances and tech, um, maybe like, hey, we ought to sit down and we ought to go through this. Maybe an adult child could help their older parent to not be so out of the loop.
Yeah, I chuckle at that because I think about my own mom who's 80. I'm sure she probably didn't appreciate me telling that. But anyway, and just some of the text, she's pretty good. She's pretty
Yeah,
good, but some of the things like, just trying to figure out her cell phone sometimes, so it's difficult. And I I have a lot of friends that we talk about tech and our parents, and sometimes you might just need to take it over for them
right.
altogether.
Right, right. But so my mom is 88. I mean, she's very with it, super smart, super organized, has all of her ducks in a row. Sometimes her tech is not so great. She probably, again, wouldn't appreciate me mentioning this, but it's the truth and she knows it. With all of her other stuff, she's great. So there are, different combinations
When
of
you think about it,
capabilities.
yeah, when you think about even me, there's certain things in tech that I can't do, that
Yeah,
I don't understand, so I don't think it has much to do with age as much as just your experience with what,
right.
that's become into your life. So try to do the best we can. But at least I think when you have younger children or ch- reach out to your grandchildren, sometimes they're smarter than even your children are when it comes to tech.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now I know that you work in Michigan. You're Michigan based, but you also work in some other states. So you do work. I don't want to say nationwide because you're not all over the country, but
Okay.
explain how people can get a hold of you and what your realm is.
Sure. First of all, you can check out my website at financialcenterforwomen.com or financialcenterwomen.com, no four in there, or email me at paula.swain@lfg.com. I'll answer any question. And if I'm not licensed in your state, I will let you know and help you find a resource within your state.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So we've run out of time. I feel like we could really get in a niche
Oh,
and talk about some of these specifics longer, but we won't today. But we'd love to have you back and
oh,
really,
thank you.
dive into some of these. So it's been great having you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And to all the Gracefully Graying viewers, thanks for taking the time to watch us on Gracefully Graying Live and find us on gracefullygraying.com. Thank you to all of our sponsors, and we will see you next time.